In the world of Hollywood legends, few stars have ever burned as brightly, or for as long, as Sophia Loren. For over 70 years, she's been the very picture of Italian glamour, a fiery, passionate force of nature whose beauty was matched only by her talent. She was the icon who conquered Hollywood, the first actor to win an Oscar for a foreign language role, and a global symbol of sensuality and strength. But behind that dazzling smile and those smoldering eyes lies a story of incredible hardship, a life that wasn't just defined by awards and adoration, but by a constant, near-relentless fight for survival. And in the fall of 2023, just after her 89th birthday, that lifelong fight took a terrifying turn. In the quiet of her Geneva home, a sudden, devastating fall shattered any illusion of invincibility. The accident was brutal, leaving her with multiple hip fractures and a serious break in her femur, injuries that would be catastrophic for anyone, let alone a woman nearly 90. She was rushed into emergency surgery, and her millions of fans around the world held their breath. As she vanished from the public eye to begin a long and grueling recovery, the silence was filled with a wave of cruel online rumors. Vile whispers of her death and baseless claims of terminal illness spread like wildfire, a sick joke aimed at a life lived with so much vitality. The world waited. How could this happen to someone who had already overcome so much? Was this the final tragic chapter for one of Hollywood's last great stars? To understand if Sophia Loren has the strength to survive this, you have to understand the secret hardships she's been surviving her entire life. What hidden tragedies forged that iron will? What private wars was she fighting when the cameras stopped rolling? This isn't just a story about a fall. It's the story of a woman who has been picking herself up from the rubble, both literal and metaphorical, since the day she was born. This is the tragedy and the triumph of Sophia Loren. Long before she was Sophia Loren, the international superstar, she was Sofia Villani Ciccolone, a child of poverty and scandal. Born in Rome in 1934 at a charity clinic, her very existence was a mark of shame in Mussolini's deeply conservative Italy. Her father, Riccardo Ciccolone, a man from a family with a noble name but little noble character, refused to marry her mother, the beautiful Romilda Villani. He abandoned them almost immediately, leaving Romilda to raise a daughter in a society that turned its back on them. They found a home in the tough working-class town of Pozzuoli, near Naples, but life was a grind of relentless poverty. Sophia was a painfully thin and sickly child, so frail she was nicknamed Stecchino, or Little Stick. Food was a constant worry, a scarcity that instilled in her a lifelong appreciation for a simple meal she was so often denied. But her personal struggles were soon swallowed by a global disaster. World War II came crashing down on Italy, and Pozzuoli, a key port city, became a constant target for Allied bombs. For young Sophia, the war wasn't some distant newsreel. It was the terrifying, ground-shaking reality of her childhood. The scream of air raid sirens was her daily soundtrack. The dark, cramped railway tunnels where her family huddled for safety were her playground. It was during one of those chaotic sprints to the shelter that the war left a permanent mark on her. As bombs fell from the sky, a piece of shrapnel ripped through the air and struck the 6-year-old Sophia, gashing her chin. That scar, which she still carries today, became a lifelong reminder of just how fragile survival really is. This is the fire that forged her spirit. She learned that life is a fight, that security is just an idea, and that being resilient wasn't a choice, it was the only option. The hunger, both for food and for a life beyond the wreckage, sharpened her resolve. The trauma of the war didn't break her. It built her. It gave her an unbreakable will, a gut-level understanding that just waking up the next day was a victory. This wasn't the first time she had to fight for her life, and as she would prove again and again, it would be far from her last. The little girl who survived the bombs grew into a woman who knew in her bones how to withstand a siege. When the war finally ended, Italy was in ruins, but for Sophia, it offered a tiny glimpse of a different future. Her skinny, stick-like frame began to blossom into the iconic curves that would one day stun the world. Her mother, Romilda, whose own dreams of an acting career had been crushed by her circumstances, saw her daughter's budding beauty as their ticket out. At just 14, Sophia was entered into a local beauty pageant. She didn't win, but she got the attention of the judges, earning a small prize, and more importantly, a spark of hope. That spark quickly grew into a fire. With her mother acting as her fierce, ambitious manager, they moved to Rome to chase the dream. They worked as extras in the epic Quo Vadis, earning just enough to get by, sharing a single room and living day to day. Sophia's beauty was a showstopper, a powerful mix of earthy sensuality and classic elegance. But in Italian cinema and later in Hollywood, it was a double-edged sword. She was constantly told her looks were too much. Casting directors were brutally honest. Her mouth was too wide, they said. Her nose was too long. The pressure to change, to get plastic surgery, and soften her distinctly Italian features for international audiences was enormous. But that same stubborn will forged in the war kicked in. She refused. Her face was her own, a map of her heritage, and her story, and she wasn't changing it for anyone. That defiance became her trademark. She was determined to be more than just a beautiful woman, more than the Italian bombshell label the press slapped on her. She fought for roles that had real depth and grit, refusing to be just a prop. When she arrived in Hollywood in the mid-1950s, it was a total culture shock. She felt like an outsider, a girl from Naples trying to find her way in a world of manufactured glamour. It was here that one of the most famous photos in Hollywood history was taken, a moment that perfectly captured the clash of personalities. At a party thrown in her honor, the blonde, publicity-hungry American star Jane Mansfield sat right next to Sophia and, in a very calculated move, leaned over the table in a famously revealing dress. The picture is legendary. As Mansfield puts it all on display, Sophia casts a sideways glance, a look of pure, unfiltered skepticism and disdain. It wasn't just a look. It was a statement. It was the street-smart survivor sizing up the superficiality of her new world. Despite the fame, it was a lonely time. She was cut off from her culture, her language, and the man she loved. Fame, she was discovering, could be an isolating fortress. Hidden behind that sultry smile was a woman dealing with intense pressure and feeling totally out of place. The price of becoming a global icon was a private war against being misunderstood, objectified, and remade into someone she wasn't. She won that war by remaining fiercely, unapologetically herself. The most powerful and stabilizing force in Sophia Loren's chaotic life showed up when she was just a teenager. At a beauty contest in 1951, the 16-year-old Sophia met Carlo Ponti, a respected film producer 22 years older than her. For Sophia, who grew up without a father, Ponti was more than just a powerful man in the movies. He was a figure of stability, wisdom, and protection. He saw past the raw beauty and recognized the fire and talent burning inside. He became her mentor, her champion, and eventually, the great love of her life. But their relationship was instantly scandalous. Ponti was a married man, and in the deeply Catholic Italy of the 1950s, divorce was illegal and unthinkable. Their love was condemned by the church and society. They were called public sinners, their affair the subject of endless gossip and moral outrage. For years, they were stuck in a romantic limbo, deeply in love, but unable to actually build a life together. The situation turned into a global soap opera. Desperate to be together, Ponti got a divorce in Mexico and married Sophia by proxy there in 1957. But the Vatican refused to recognize it. Back in Italy, Ponti was charged with bigamy, and Sophia was accused of being his concubine. They faced Being excommunicated from the church and even potential jail time, the marriage had to be annulled, and they were forced to live as romantic exiles, unable to be husband and wife in their own country. During this mess, another Hollywood legend entered the picture, Cary Grant. While filming The Pride and the Passion, the impossibly charming Grant, who was 30 years her senior, fell head over heels for Sophia. He proposed, offering her a glamorous, legitimate life as the wife of a beloved Hollywood star. For a woman who desperately wanted stability and acceptance, it had to be tempting. The world watched, wondering if she'd choose the Hollywood icon over her scandalous, complicated love. But her bond with Carlo was different. It wasn't about glamour. It was about a deep, shared history and unbreakable loyalty. She chose Carlo. They spent years battling the courts and public opinion, eventually becoming French citizens, so Ponti could legally get a divorce and they could finally remarry in 1966. Their love story wasn't a fairy tale. It was a war they won together. For over 40 years, until he died in 2007, Carlo was her rock. He was the anchor in the storm of her fame, the one person who knew the girl from Pozzuoli just as well as the global superstar. Losing him was one of the deepest tragedies of her life, a loss she has never truly gotten over. She has spoken of the profound loneliness that came after, a quiet emptiness that no amount of fame could ever fill. He was her family, her protector, and her greatest love. And losing him was a heartbreak that time simply couldn't heal. On screen, Sophia Loren often played the role of a passionate, earthy mother, but her real-life journey to motherhood was a private road of agony and heartbreaking loss. More than any Oscar or award, her deepest desire was to have a family of her own. By her late 20s, she said that desire had grown into an obsession. She wanted to build the stable, loving family she never had as a child, but that dream turned out to be a cruel one. After marrying Carlo, she suffered 2 miscarriages, and each one left her emotionally shattered. The world saw a glamorous movie star, but behind closed doors, she was a woman grieving the children she'd lost and terrified she might never have any. In her memoir, she wrote about this dark time, saying her life as a star felt like nothing compared to the happiness she saw in the new mothers at the hospital. The pain was immense, a deep personal tragedy happening far from the public eye. Doctors at the time had few answers, and she was left feeling like a failure. How could a woman who seemed to embody life and fertility on screen be unable to carry a child? The irony was painful, but it only fueled her determination. This was yet another battle she refused to lose. Following the advice of a specialist, she made a brave decision. At the absolute height of her career, when Hollywood was still begging for her, she walked away. She put her acting ambitions on pause and checked into a hotel room in Geneva, ready to do whatever it took. For her first successful pregnancy, she had to stay in bed for months, a virtual prisoner to her dream. Every single day was a mix of hope and terror, a waiting game with the highest possible stakes. Finally, in 1968, her prayers were answered. Carlo Ponti Jr. was born. 4 years later, after another difficult, carefully monitored pregnancy, her second son, Eduardo, arrived. The joy was beyond words. She had literally fought for her children, sacrificing her freedom and career to bring them into the world safely. She poured all of her fierce love and protective energy into raising them. Her sons became the absolute center of her universe, the living proof of a dream she had almost given up on. This fight for her family gives the deepest meaning to her role as a matriarch today. Her sons and her grandchildren aren't just her family, they're her greatest victories. They are the trophies she won against biology, against despair, and against the ghosts of her own lonely childhood. Carlo Ponti's death in 2007 marked the end of an era for Sophia Loren. It was a loss that could have signaled her retreat from the world, a final, quiet curtain call. But Sophia, the ultimate survivor, didn't just fade away. Instead, she stepped fully into the role she'd been preparing for her whole life, the undisputed matriarch of the Ponti dynasty, the powerful protective center of the family she fought so hard to create. Her focus, which was already on her family, became crystal clear. Her two sons, Carlo Jr., a celebrated orchestra conductor, and Eduardo, a successful film director, were her everything. She became the doting nonna to her 4 grandchildren, loving the simple joys of family that had once been her most desperate prayer. Her home in Geneva became the heart of their world, a place of warmth and Italian tradition, filled with the food and laughter she rarely had as a girl. Her career also took on a new, more personal meaning. She became incredibly selective, choosing projects that meant something to her. The most important of these was the 2020 film The Life Ahead, directed by her youngest son, Eduardo. In it, she played Madame Rosa, a Holocaust survivor who takes in a young orphan. The role was a stunning return, earning her rave reviews and proving that the fire of her talent hadn't faded one bit. Working with her son was a beautiful, full-circle moment. The boy whose life she had willed into existence was now directing her in a performance that echoed the biggest themes of her own life: survival, resilience, and building family in unexpected places. Eduardo spoke with awe about her dedication, pointing out that at 86, an age when most would be enjoying a quiet retirement, his mother chose to risk it all on an emotionally and physically draining role. As he put it, when you are an artist, you can't stop, because there's that desire to create that keeps you up at night. This chapter of her life wasn't a slow fade into old age. It was a powerful third act. She remained a global style icon, but her public appearances became less about being a star and more about the quiet confidence of being a legend. She had nothing left to prove. Her legacy was secure, not just in her iconic films, but in the family she built and the unwavering strength she still projects. She was no longer just Sophia Loren, the movie star. She was Sophia Loren, the matriarch, and the survivor. Sophia Loren's story is about overcoming unbelievable odds, from the horrors of war to the private heartbreaks of her personal life. It's a powerful testament to the human spirit. What part of her incredible journey inspires you the most? Her rise from poverty, her scandalous love story, or her fight for her family? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're moved by stories of resilience and the hidden lives of Hollywood legends, make sure to subscribe for more. And so we come back to today, to a quiet room in Geneva, where a 90-year-old woman is facing one of the toughest fights of her life. The fall in September 2023 wasn't a minor slip. The fractures were severe, the surgery was complex, and the road to recovery has been grueling. For months, she was hidden from the world, and her silence fueled a storm of morbid rumors about her health. But anyone who whispered that this was the end fundamentally misunderstood who Sophia Loren is. They saw a frail, elderly woman. They forgot the war-torn survivor. They saw a victim. They forgot the fighter. And in the spring of 2024, the legend re-emerged. Sophia was seen in public again, and by September 2024, she was celebrating her 90th birthday in Rome, surrounded by over 100 family members and friends, looking radiant in a Giorgio Armani gown. Though leaning on a stylish walking stick, she was undeniably, magnificently back. She was smiling, elegant, and radiating the same inner strength that has defined her for nearly a century. Her recovery is more than just physical. It's a spiritual victory. It's a powerful rejection of the ageism that would write off a woman, of her years, and proof of the resilience that's been the one constant in her life. When asked about aging, she once said, "When I look in the mirror, I cheer for myself. I don't ask, 'Are you great?' or 'Are you beautiful?' No, it's how I feel inside, how secure I am, how happy I am. That's what matters." The tragedy of Sophia Loren isn't the fall itself. The heartbreak is realizing that even our most enduring icons, women who seem carved from fire and marble, are still human. It's the clash between her legendary strength and the stark reality of aging. Yet her story has never really been one of tragedy. It is the ultimate saga of triumph. From the rubble of Pozzuoli to the peak of Hollywood, from the shame of her childhood to the glory of being a beloved icon, from the agony of infertility to the joy of being a cherished mother and grandmother, Sophia Loren's life is a masterclass in how to survive. She isn't just a movie star, she's a force of nature. Her legacy isn't just in her films, but in the courage she showed living life completely on her own terms. She faced war, poverty, scandal, heartbreak, and the relentless march of time, and she met every single challenge with her head held high. She didn't just survive, she prevailed. And as she continues her recovery, one careful step at a time, she reminds the world one last powerful time that beauty isn't about youth, and strength isn't about the absence of wounds. It's about the courage to show your scars, to keep fighting, and to always, always get back up.